Hello, everyone, denizens of the internet. It's my pleasure to be speaking with Vic Mignogna, who is probably most well known to most of you as the continues Star Trek continues version of Captain Kirk. Correct, Vic?
That's correct. Well, I hope so. I hope so.
Did I say Vince at the beginning?
It's a pleasure to join you. What's that, Paul?
Did I say Vince at the beginning or Vic?
No, I think you said Vic. I was more focused on the fact that you nailed the last name. You could have said anything for the first name.
How do people pronounce
it? Vance Mignogna. Like he got the last name right.
Well, people have a hard time pronouncing Chato, my last name. So listen, I try to respect people's names. A pleasure. I'm a huge fan of Star Trek, and a very big fan of Continues. Now, I have to be completely honest with you. I've been publishing stuff about Star Trek, for a bit, but I'd not seen Continues, even though my friend Robert Sawyer wrote for it. And I didn't make the connection. And then when I did a show on just recently, and people went, "Oh, you gotta watch Continues. I mean, it's awesome." So I went through your all the shows.
Okay, so you did see it. Okay,
I binged, of course. I'm
not
one of your typical Hollywood interviewers who have research on you.
For a minute, when you said I've never really seen it myself, I'm like, wait a minute, what?
No. Up until a little while.
Gotcha.
Here's what I want to talk about.
All right.
Obviously, the part that I'm most fascinated about is, as the former network executive reaction channel here, is I'm really fascinated by the financing of independent productions in this day and age. Independents have always been looking for some kind of outlet. The streamers kind of maybe looked like a possibility, but once Netflix, I know they're having troubles now, but once they hit their stride, you had to have an agent. And you have to have a specific agent who will let you pass the Netflix gatekeepers. All the other channels are connected to some studio, so you need agents or mega agents or something like that. And in the end, YouTube, and I'm going to talk about Tubi TV also. I don't know if you have any experience with Tubi TV.
No, I know about it.
I'll tell you about that, their model. But YouTube at one point, well, you were on YouTube. That's what I want to talk about: the financing of the show, how you went about it, the Kickstarter business, and then dovetail it from there to, what your thoughts of using YouTube for a non-IP product, because obviously it's easier to promote something that's based on Star Trek versus, the Vic Mignogna story.
Right. Right.
Not as big an IP, as much as
nowhere near
as famous as you are. I'm not trying to insult you.
No, not at all. No,
that's it, Paul. I'm not talking.
I couldn't agree more. Most people are like, I don't want to read something about Vic Mignogna. I want to read something about Bill Shatner.
That's right.
I get it.
Who blocked me on Twitter?
What?
Bill. I was like, I don't know. Blocked me on Twitter.
Why did he block
you? I have no idea.
What did you do, Paul?
That's what I have no way to find out. Anyways.
Well, anyway, I love Bill. I love Bill, and I don't know why. Obviously, I don't have any idea about that, but I do know that he has people that, obviously being as popular and famous and successful as he is, he has people that help him with social media.
Oh, they're going to manage his channel.
But I love Bill.
Bill, if you're listening to this, please tell me what I did wrong. I have no idea. Okay, so that's kind of the scope that I'm really interested in. Your experience is invaluable. You started this thing, it was about 7 some odd years ago that you did this.
Maybe 8 now. Let's see.
8 now, and you did Kickstarter. So that's the key. Is so first of all, I guess what's my first question is thoughts on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, those platforms. What was it like working with them, and would you use them again for a non-IP related product that maybe you're developing?
In answer to the short answer to your question is, we had very successful runs on Kickstarter.
Okay.
Or as we like to call them, Kirkstarter. I mean, that's low hanging fruit, bro. Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
sorry, that was good.
That's just begging to be used. We had yeah, we had really good, successful campaigns on Kickstarter, and we did one Indiegogo, and I think our little twist on that was like Indiegogo where no man has gone before, or something like that. But yeah, right. But we didn't have a successful campaign on Indiegogo as we did with Kickstarter. I'm not even close to an expert on that stuff, so I wouldn't be able to, show you graphs and percentages and studies that show why this happened better than this and why this works better than that. All I can tell you is that myself and a friend, I covered the lion's share of getting Star Trek Continues off the ground. Back in 2012, 2013, I wanted to make one episode of classic Star Trek and pay tribute to this show that I loved so much when I was young, and a show that inspired me in many ways to do things for the first time that I do professionally now. Star Trek really set me on a path of creativity. And I built off of that. And so 40 years later, I want to pay tribute to Star Trek with whatever skills I have developed over the years in filmmaking, acting, music, editing, sound design, props, sets, lighting, camera. And so a lot of people said, hey, are you going to launch a crowdfunding campaign? And I thought, no, because I felt like it was ethically inappropriate for me to ask a bunch of strangers to give me money to do something that they had no proof I could do. So I thought, well, this is an opportunity for me to put my money where my mouth is. If this is my dream, if this is my childhood dream, then I should be willing to invest in it. So I paid to rent a building in South Georgia. I paid to have the sets built, recreated to spot on accuracy. Took us about a year to build those. And of course, there were lots of volunteers, obviously. This was not a for-profit project. So everybody knew coming in that it was a labor of love. It was a passion project. I went down myself at least a dozen times and helped saw and build and sand and paint and do all of, help build the sets as well. I wanted to be a part of that as well. And I had a dear friend that contributed a little bit to help out. And so then it came time to shoot the episode, our first episode, and at the time, the only episode that I expected we would do. And we wrote this episode, which was a sequel to an original series episode. And I paid to fly everybody down. I paid to put them in hotels. I paid to feed them every day. I paid to rent the camera gear. I funded, and my friend, Steve, funded everything leading up to making the first episode. And after we made it and completed it and released it and people really enjoyed it and we got such a great response, then I thought, okay, well, now we have a proof of concept. Now we've actually made something that we can say, hey, if you like this, this is what we can do. This is the level that we can do it at if you want to help us make more. And so we launched our first Kickstarter, and we made enough. We made enough to make episodes 2, 3, and 4.
Mm-hmm.
Then we launched.
Did you have perks? Did you do all the Kirk? And that's what I'm interested, the management of the perks too, because when I did a couple of Kickstarters, that was the biggest pain in the ass.
Yeah, the perks are always a pain in the ass, but we did have a couple of people that managed that.
Okay.
And we got a great response. We had plenty of different perks. At some point right in there, and I think this is a really big point to make. At some point in there, we applied for and were granted a 501c3 nonprofit status. So we literally created Trek Continues Inc. that our production was made under. And we were able to submit the paperwork to say this is a nonprofit venture. It's educational. We bring people in to learn elements of filmmaking and science and sci-fi and techniques of production that people can learn. And we brought a lot of my fans of my anime work, of my voice acting work, came in and volunteered for free just to learn about the filmmaking process.
And that was partly to circumvent getting sued by, I guess, CBS at the time?
Well, no. There are tons of Star Trek productions that do not have nonprofit status, but they've never been sued. The line in the sand that CBS has always drawn is, we'll let you play Star Trek. We'll let you fulfill your childhood dream, and you want to put on a uniform and play Star Trek, that's fine. Just don't try to make money off of our IP.
Right.
Don't try to sell Star Trek. Don't try to sell, merchandise to line your pockets. If you want to make a fan production and you want to raise the money to pay the hard costs associated with making that production, like airline tickets and camera dolly and lighting package and hotel rooms, that's fine. But you're not allowed to personally profit from their IP.
Do they demand to see any above and below the line accounting?
They did not back then. But I mean,
But obviously, if an actor wants to be paid and they're doing it for scale, is that allowed?
Every actor that I brought in, I had this conversation with. And here's the conversation in a nutshell. It went like this. I would love for you to play this role, but this is not a money-making venture.
Sure.
However, you'll be part of something very special. And I have a feeling you're going to be a part of something that's going to far outlast you. And if you'd like to be a part of something purely for the joy of being a part of something special, this is an opportunity. If you want to be paid, if you're expecting to make a big buck, I'll find somebody else.
Or I'm saying any money. Like you didn't have to pay the actors. They didn't.
We didn't have to, but by the end of our series, we gave them like a food per diem.
Okay.
So they weren't out of pocket. With that was the key for me, was I don't want anybody to be out of pocket on their own. Okay. I don't want them to have to pay for their own airline tickets to come down here and work on our show. I don't want them to have to pay for their own food. I don't want them to have to pay for their hotel room. So we took care of the necessities for people to come down.
Yeah, I would say, though, it's a very big difference between a producer saying, hey, we're going to work on this Star Trek labor of love versus the umpteen number of producers who will approach an actor and say, if you just do this Debbie Does Dallas thing for me, then, then the riches are going to come. So,
yes,
Vic, you better be careful with that pitch, because
there was no promise of riches. There was no. I'm just saying. Just saying. In our case, there was no promise that there would be a big paying gig. If you do this for free, I can guarantee you this. But I can tell you this, Paul. Many of our production people have gone on to get hired for professional paying jobs because of their work on Star Trek Continues. And that is something that I did promise them. I said, the production value of this project is going to be such that it's something you can be proud of.
So let's now dovetail to one of the meaty parts of the discussion I wanted to have with you, is that you've got this vast experience actually having financed and kickstarted and produced and actually had the damn thing on YouTube and being loved by many, many, many people. If you were not doing a Star Trek and you at some point the production does have to flip over from being a labor of love by a bunch of people, where you do need, and let's say you decide that YouTube is going to be the vehicle that you're going to be launching this 20 episode series thing, then it has to get serious about paying people.
Yes.
Obviously,
absolutely.
You're not going to be talking about the same number of people that that Star Trek is going to have. You could have a sitcom of 3 people, 5 people, something like that.
Sure.
But you're dealing with contracts. At one point, does it become a SAG project? I mean,
right.
these are all, you don't have to
of
answer those questions right now, but that's what I'm fascinated about. And I'm just wondering whether you can offer any kind of insight into that.
Yeah, I can, actually. The fact that we made Star Trek Continues at the level of quality that we did for so little money and for love, and proved what we were capable of, and thereby gained millions of fans. I have had hundreds of people write me and say, if you ever do anything else, I would be more than happy to donate to it. So one of the good things that came out of Star Trek Continues that was no money made was we demonstrated what we were capable of. And that would play very prominently into me ever launching another project for profit. If I ever came up with an idea that I was passionate about, I could go to Star Trek Continues social media and say, okay, guys, I've got this great idea and I need your help. I've got thousands of people that will help because they appreciated and saw already the quality of what we can do.
So are you intimating that independent producers might have a strategy where they work on some kind of popular IP, let's say Star Wars or something like that, get that under their belt, get people to know you for doing something of quality within that context?
Well, maybe not even necessarily a super popular IP, but do something to demonstrate that you actually can do this.
That's an interesting, I think that's a fair point.
I mean, make a trailer,
right?
Make a 30-second clip that
which
makes people go, wow, they really know what they're doing. This looks great.
Yeah, Kickstarter requires you to include some kind of trailer. Usually it's a bunch of people sitting on a couch telling you what the project is going to be and how great it is.
Yeah, you know, I'm talking about something a little more involved than that. It doesn't have to be a popular IP, but if you can demonstrate to people the quality of what you can do, they're going to be a lot more apt to want to donate to your project. They know it's going to be something legitimately good.
So have you heard of Felicia Day's The Guild?
Yes, I know Felicia very well. Okay. Yes.
So she might even have been on some of the daises with you on tour. So as far as I'm concerned, The Guild was the only successful webisode attempt on YouTube. And when she was doing that, that was also in the middle of what I call a gold rush of webisodes. There were many people attempting it. Most of the people were actually shooting failed pilots that the networks didn't pick up. So they thought YouTube would be the gold rush and the source of their success for this garbage. Sorry.
Yeah.
And but hers was the only one that succeeded. So maybe why did The Guild succeed when pretty much everything else failed?
I don't know. Honestly, I've done a lot of events with Felicia. I love her to death. She's one of the sweetest people I've ever met. If I had to speculate, I would say that she got into new territory when it was still fresh and uncharted. And she, you know what I mean? She did something groundbreaking. And people were interested in that. And the people that come after her and just try to do the same thing don't necessarily get the same, you know, they just don't necessarily get the same outcome. You know.
So do you think if YouTube was going to become a vehicle for someone's independent production, that they should stick to network timing, 24 minutes for sitcom and 40 to 44 minutes for an hour?
I don't know. I really don't. I really don't. I will say this about YouTube. YouTube was created originally, its purpose was to allow anybody to post anything, right? I mean, you can put a video up of your cat eating Velveeta cheese. It really doesn't matter. You can put anything you want on YouTube. There is no standard of quality.
No.
You know what I mean? It could be you could have shot it with your crappy flip phone 8 years ago, or you could have shot it with a 4K red camera, you know, and uploaded it. It could be anything. It could be your neighbor washing his car in his gym shorts. I mean, it doesn't really matter. So, in my opinion, I think a lot of people see YouTube as kind of the poor man's network. You know what I mean? Like, oh, if you can't get a network deal, or you can't afford to make something of a higher quality of production value, you can certainly throw it on YouTube, because you can throw anything on YouTube. There is no minimal standard of quality.
No, but why can't independent producers who are reasonably good crack the YouTube formula? It should work.
You mean, when you say YouTube formula, what do you mean?
Well, put it this way. YouTube attempted their own streaming service called Red.
Right.
And they funded over 150 programs. They all failed, except for Cobra Kai, which then moved over to Netflix.
Right.
And maybe a couple of other ones. But other than that, their attempt.
I think it may be. I really think, and again, I could be wrong.
No.
But I'm
wrong all the time.
The more we speak, the more you talk about it, the more I think my assertion is correct. There is a perception of YouTube that YouTube is the amateur guy's place.
Correct.
And if you can't make it on Netflix, at least you can throw it up on YouTube.
And I agree that Red went against the YouTube brand.
Yeah. In fact, you know what?
That's the problem.
You know what? Why is YouTube so popular? Because it broke ground. It did something no one had ever done. Just like we talked about the Guild a minute ago. YouTube started a service that up to that point, nobody had ever done anything like that. They gave the average guy the power to upload videos and share them. So even YouTube was groundbreaking and revolutionary. Half the people I talk to don't know what Vimeo is.
True.
Vimeo is a high-end YouTube, right? People don't even know what Vimeo is, but they know what YouTube is. In the same way, Paul, people don't know what Ethereum and Bacablatitad and Plutonium XY. They don't know what any of that is, but they sure as hell know what Bitcoin is. Yes. You see what I mean?
And you didn't know what Tubi. You'd never heard of Tubi TV.
The organization or the group or the website or the company that broke that new ground, often, you know, they become super famous and popular, and then everybody tries to do other things like them, and they just can't seem to get any traction. When people ask me, where do I find Star Trek Continues? Do you know what I tell them? StarTrekContinues.com.
Okay, right.
I tell them to go to our website.
Right.
Because I know, even in my own mind, if I say, oh, it's on YouTube, somebody goes, oh. You know what I mean? It's like this feeling of like, oh, so it's some kind of
interesting
homemade. I uploaded it from my grandma's house. You know what I mean? I think there's a perception there. I really do. I know there is with me, and there's nothing unusual about me. If you told me, oh yeah, look up my thing on YouTube, in my back of my mind, I'm like, oh, YouTube. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a perception there.
Yep. Well, unless you're doing periodontal work and you're showing people how you're doing it on YouTube.
Exactly. This is how to change your background screen on your iPhone. I mean, like,
there you go.
Anybody can upload anything. And so by its very nature, I feel like that tends to diminish the perception of quality, the perception of production value, even if it is there.
The problem is, I mean, in my heart of hearts, I'd love to find a way to crack the YouTube formula on behalf of independent producers.
So would I, as
so
an
it would be consistent
producer,
that they have a place for it. And I think, to be quite honest, I think YouTube there should be a middle ground where they're not going after Netflix, which they've now failed at doing. And then they're now decided they're just doing YouTube shorts and you know, let girls dance to music and become influencers. Right. But there's got to be some influencers. And so the independent producer still does not have a place.
No.
And I've always thought that YouTube was it if they just could figure out how to create an aggregating methodology for independent producers. The other thing too that YouTube didn't have when they did Red was they didn't create their own Entertainment Tonight. So YouTube are a bunch of programmers and geeks. They're not entertainers. They don't understand show business.
Right.
So, you know, when you did Continues, you should have been on the YouTube version of Entertainment Tonight, being interviewed by whoever host that they have. There used to be, you know, a geek channel called G3 for games.
I remember
like that.
Well. Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been fantastic. I think people would like to know what the cost of each of the Continues episodes were. What were the budgets?
Happily. I'll tell you what, that's another reason that we didn't really have to do a bunch of accounting, because because every penny was on screen. Anybody that knows anything about production, if I said to them, you see this hour-long, full-length drama with full cast, full sets, original music, sound design, special effects, you see all of this? We did this for this much money. They would be like, oh yeah, you're not lining your pockets, that's for sure, because there wouldn't be any money left.
Right.
When we made here are the numbers you're asking about. I put roughly $150,000 of my own money into getting Star Trek Continues off the ground.
Okay.
That money went in the form of renting the building, all the raw materials involved in building the sets, flying everybody down, hotel rooms, food every day. I put roughly $150,000 into getting it off the ground. Our first episode cost about $40,000, maybe $38,000 to $45,000. Now, once we started crowdfunding and we started thinking bigger, more imaginatively, our budgets tended to go up because we would bring more guest stars in, which meant more flights, and we started catering meals for the cast and crew every day. And you know, just by the nature of the beast, the budgets went up, and by the end of our series, our last couple of episodes cost around $70,000 to $80,000.
That's still very inexpensive.
Exactly. That's what I was just about to form that thought. You may think that sounds like a lot. Oh. Let me put it into perspective for you. Let me put it into perspective for the lay people in your audience that don't know. The original Star Trek series budget per episode was about $115,000 to $120,000 in 1967, 68, 69. You know how much that is now? It's well over $1 million. In other words, we made, for less than $80,000 an episode, exactly what they made, in my opinion, close to the same quality.
Oh yeah, it was beautifully done, beautifully shot.
For less than 1/10 of what they spent on their episodes. That's unheard of. Unheard of. to make an hour-long episode with 35 cast and crew members and sets, locations, effects, music, sound design, editing, everything.
Wow.
Building sets for episodes, building new props, and having to make original designed costumes and all of the costs that go into it. And we still were able to make something of comparable quality to the original series for less than 1/10.
Yeah, the challenge ultimately is, as an independent producer, how can one actually make a living doing something on YouTube? We won't answer that today. I will finish off by saying I was very impressed with the fact that you did Kirk without making it a caricature.
Thank you.
I believed it was Kirk, kind of a sideways Kirk, if I can call it that. I was very, very impressed with your performance.
Well, I appreciate that, Paul, very much. And let me say something about that. We talked about Bill Shatner earlier. I love Bill. Bill was the father figure I never had when I was 10, 12, 13, 15. My parents divorced when I was 9, and I discovered Star Trek in the apartment I lived in with my mom. And Captain Kirk was very much a role model and a father figure to me. And when I decided I wanted to make an episode of Star Trek, my intention was, I want to pay tribute to Bill Shatner. I want to pay tribute to the people that made that show that impacted me the way it did. I want to honor them. The last thing I would ever want to do is to be perceived as mimicking or satiring or parodying them. So I will tell you something I've told a lot of people, Paul. When we shot our series, every episode, I would pull our first AD, Scotty Whitehurst, aside, and I'd say, hey, Scotty, stand by the monitor and watch every take. And if I do too much Shatner,
right,
let me know. And we would start shooting scenes, and every once in a while, not often, but every once in a while, Scotty would come over to me and go, there was just a little too much Shatner in right. that. You know what I mean? And I'd be like, all right, let's do it again. Let's take another one. No questions asked. Let's just do it again. And then I would get home with all the footage because I edited the episodes. I edited all of our episodes, every cut. And I would watch them. And if I did something that was a little too much, I'm like, nah, not going to use that take. So I wanted to pay tribute to the character that Bill created.
You did a good job.
I wanted to build on it. I wanted to put that character in new situations and show another side of that character that maybe you didn't necessarily see in the original series. And I even read an article where Shatner was quoted as saying, had they gone forward with the revival of the TV series, you know, they were very close to making Star Trek Phase 2, which was going to be in the 70s. And at the last minute, they decided to do motion pictures because Star Wars had become so popular in the theaters. So they decided to ride that wave off of the Star Wars success and make Star Trek movies. But Shatner was quoted as saying, had there been another series, he wanted to humanize Captain Kirk. He wanted to bring more depth and struggle to the character. And I remember hearing that and thinking, I want to do that in my portrayal of that character. I want to show a side of him that demonstrates that he struggles with the same regrets, fears, shame, uncertainties, loss, love, all the different things that back in the 60s, TV heroes were, they always had the answer. They always knew the solution. They always saved the day. They always got the girl, you know. And while that might have been fun, it wasn't realistic. It was hard to identify with somebody. We've received literally thousands of emails from fans that said, I love the way you humanized and brought more dimension to the character in your episodes.
I would agree. They were very entertaining. So let's leave it at that. We did not solve the independent production YouTube conundrum, which is what I needed you for, Vic.
Oh my gosh. I would like to think that we maybe brought a little light to some good theories.
Yeah. And, yeah, we've Sisyphus have I think we've pushed that rock up the hill just a little bit further. Not as far as I wanted.
Let me personally invite you and all of your viewers, listeners, look up www.neutralzonestudios.com. That is the studio, the people that have taken over the studio that we built for Star Trek Continues. They own it now, and they make it available for people to walk through. One weekend every month, people come from all over the country to be able to walk through the original soundstage, sit in the captain's chair, step up on the transporter platform. I'm telling you, it's like being a kid, man. It's like it's an experience like no other. And if you go to neutralzonestudios.com, there's one more weekend coming up in May, and then they'll close down for the summer months because it just gets too hot down in Georgia. But then we'll pick it back up in the fall, and I go down personally and give the tours and walk people through and answer questions and tell them everything about the building of the sets and where'd you get that and how'd you make that and how did you know how big to make that and why is that color and where'd you find that. So if any of you, including you, Paul, are interested, and I know there are a lot of people out there that would love to walk through.
I would love to sit in the captain's chair.
You got it. Neutralzonestudios.com.
Okay. I will actually put a link in the description field below. Vic, a pleasure. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this discussion. And
my pleasure. I'm sorry that we didn't answer all the questions of the universe, but I really enjoyed talking with you, and hopefully we can do it again.
Absolutely. I'm sure there'll be another reason to chat.
I hope so.
So long. Oh, yeah. I can do it.
Thanks for having me, man.
Bye, Vic.